So we've just had the US Grand Prix at Austin, and actually that was much better than the sprint race, wasn't it? Strategy was a key part of that. Let's go through the key moments, and then we'll go through the 3 good and the 3 bad of the race for me. Yeah, really it was the start, wasn't it? Lando Norris got a brilliant start up on the inside of Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton dropped back. Both Mercedes had a bad start, didn't they? Verstappen in there with a fight also. And then the race settled down a little bit, and actually it wasn't Max Verstappen just flying through it up at the front by lap 5, was it? It was really, really close up at the front. The two, both Mercedes and McLaren, really pushing that Red Bull all the way through the race. And it was quite clear early on, though, that the Ferrari, despite having good one-lap pace, was just struggling in the race again, which is a real shame. They were just slow throughout. And then it came the strategy points, wasn't it? When were you going to pit? And Red Bull went early, weren't they, with Max Verstappen going for that 2-stop strategy, and I think that really threw the race wide open. I'm surprised they did that a little bit. They just shown the hand early that they're going to go that way. It then just made, or helped Mercedes and McLaren plan their strategy, and then McLaren threw a mix, didn't they, with pitting Lando early for the second stint onto the hards. Verstappen followed early, and then Lewis Hamilton, because he ran longer in his first stint, and we'll get to that, whether that was a mistake or not by Mercedes, then ran a bit longer on the second stint and got into the mediums, and that offsetting tyre really made an interesting race at the end, didn't it? For Max Verstappen winning by 2 seconds, I didn't see it being that close of a race. Yes, he had some issues with his braking, and he really didn't like the hard tyres, he was saying at the end. But it's been a lot closer from McLaren and Mercedes on Red Bull. Have they closed the gap? It's all brilliant news for the championship, and to see 3 of them going up, potentially we could see them fighting for wins, towards the end of this race, this season, and potentially into next season also. And it's going to be a shame then that in the end of 25 we're going to have another reset when all the cars are finally closed up with a change in regulations. Are we seeing that as a mistake from the FIA and to change regulations after a few years, which we're seeing that, eventually cars get closer, a rule change, one runs ahead, and then everyone playing catch up, they get closer together, and then another change and someone else runs ahead. Is this, this is a pattern that we're seeing. It was brilliant in 21 when Red Bull closed up to Mercedes and Max won that championship. We're seeing, now Red Bull went off, and now the others closing in, and potentially by 25 we might have a brilliant championship in 26 with that big rule change. Are we going to see this sort of circle keep playing out, and are the FIA jumping the gun a bit here with the regulations? It's probably a video for another day, but yeah, it'll be very interesting that. But onto the race, yeah, thankfully for that, and Max Verstappen held on for the win. Lewis Hamilton second. He was absolutely brilliant, wasn't he? And it was so close. I think another couple of laps, and we would have potentially seen another battle between them two rivals. Great rivalry, Hamilton and Verstappen. It's a shame actually that we just didn't get to see that. Mercedes, they went longer on that first stint, didn't they? And that cost them a little bit. They had another slow stop, which is something that they need to sort of fix, don't they? McLaren have got on top of their pit strategy, and Mercedes never really either they're not focusing, I'm sure they are, but they've never really got quite on top of it. We rarely see them getting into the low 2-second pit stops. It's always mid 2 seconds, often close to that 3 second we see their pit stops, and that's an area probably where they need to change that. He lost probably a second there. He lost time behind Charles Leclerc also, and then going 2 laps longer he was really quite slow, and when he came out, he had 9 seconds to gain on the lead of Lando Norris, so quite a big gap. And had he pitted possibly even just 1 lap earlier, it would have been about sub 7 seconds behind, and we're still with an offset. Would it have been enough though of the offset to let them go and do that extra bit and get on the mediums potentially? But I don't think they said, like Total said at the end of the race, that they thought the tyres would drop off as hard as they did. But it was a fantastic race. And let's get onto the 3 good and the 3 bad for the race. Lewis Hamilton being back for me was number 1. He was absolutely on it all weekend. P2 in the sprint, P2 in the race, and actually he was on Max Verstappen's pace for much of that race, wasn't he? And that was a real change, and to finish just 2 seconds behind at the end of the race, where they've been probably 2 seconds a lap slower at parts of this season, that shows what a magnificent job they've done. And he was just brilliant, Lewis. He was on it from minute 1. Nothing but a top 5-star performance from Lewis Hamilton. And then for me, in the next on the 3 good is Lance Stroll, from pit lane to P9. You've got to hand it to him, because we've been so harsh on him throughout much of this season, and I think that's an actually really, really good result. He would have been outshone, don't gloss it too much. He would have been outshone by Fernando Alonso, who was in the older spec car, but for he got a race suspension issue and they had to retire the car. It was a floor issue in the end. But yeah, from pit lane to P9, what a brilliant job from Lance Stroll. And then comes Yuki Tsunoda in the 3 good to finish that up, and a P10 and a point for the fastest lap. 2 points for him. A really good race for him. He was beaten by his teammate yesterday in the sprint, but he was on it in the race. He beats his teammate, gets 2 points, which is crucial. He's just got to be really, really happy with himself. He was so disappointed in qualifying, even in sprint. And what a turn in performance. And then into the 3 bad for the race. It's got to be Daniel Ricciardo, hasn't he? He had a really poor race. I'm not sure what's gone on there. Was he having issues with the car, or did he just struggle with his hand towards the end? He was, the last of the runners. And actually was good in sprint, and maybe the race was just maybe a step far for his hand. We'll hear and see and find out more on that, but yeah, that was really disappointing from him. And next up on that is the Ferrari. Actually, they were really poor in the race, and it's a shame actually, because their 1 lap pace was absolutely fantastic. He was on pole, Charles Leclerc, and Ferrari doing Ferrari things. What did they do with the strategy? They got the sprint strategy wrong with starting Carlos Sainz on the softs on sprint day. I mean, he was the only driver to do that. And today they've done it again. Charles Leclerc, the only driver to do one-stop strategy. How did they not see that wasn't the way to go? Nobody did it. Absolutely nobody did a one-stop. And yeah, he struggled. He went from pole to P6 to Charles Leclerc in that race, beaten by his teammate again, and he was really annoyed, wasn't he? He was saying, we'll talk about this after the race, of why he had to let his teammate pass, because they've just left him in no man's business. And the third on that 3 bad has got to be the Haas team. They come with a big upgrade, and it didn't really work for them. They weren't great in qualifying. They weren't great in the race either. Did they get it wrong by bringing it to a sprint weekend where you've only got 1 free practice? You don't get the time to, get and hone your car to the circuit, get an idea of where things are with a whole new aero package. It just makes it that bit harder. And, even teams that know their car struggled with just the 1 free practice. So yeah, they'll be disappointed with that. There's been a lot of talk about the sprint and the format, hasn't there, really? I think actually the sprint weekend really works with having just 1 free practice. I personally really like that they just get one practice, you get your car out or you don't, and actually we see quite a mix in the race, don't we? Cars, even the leading car, having some sort of issue to manage because they've not really iron that out with 3 free practices, where you get an absolutely perfect car, and they know what to expect throughout the race. I think this adds a little extra element, which me personally I like. It's just a sprint race format we've seen it gave almost too much away for what's going to happen in the race, didn't it? Much like what we've seen earlier in the season with Baku, where Charles Leclerc again was on pole, but then was, you know, beaten by Max Verstappen in the sprint, and it was, you know, we just knew what to expect come race day, and it's kind of worked out a little bit the same like that. We knew Max Verstappen was always going to be good in the race and run away with it. Potentially didn't really quite run away with it in the end, but then we knew that we'd have a battle with the McLaren and Mercedes. That came to fruition, and that the Ferrari would lean back, and then we've kind of lost a bit of that spice, haven't we? Had we just gone into this race and it panned out the way, I think we'd been a lot more excited by that. And so I think really the talk has got to be, how do we change that sprint race? We don't just need a 1/3 race of what's going to happen later on Sunday. There's nothing actually different really happening here. The qualifying for the sprint is just another version or shorter version of what we see for the race, and the sprint is just, you know, there's nothing actually different going to happen here. So do we go reverse grids? Do we do something? You know, that's something that I'll think about and maybe make a video on later on to share and see what ideas, you know, they could come up with. And I think really that's the only thing that needs to change when we do these sprint setups. But yeah, other than that, it was an absolutely cracking race, wasn't it? I really enjoyed that. Much better than sprint day yesterday. And yeah, cracking. Max Verstappen wins. Lewis Hamilton second, and that Mercedes and the McLaren look really on the hunt, don't they? Cannot wait. Just a week's time, we go to Mexico next time out. Short turnaround time, so watch out for the driver ratings video coming shortly, early in the week. And then the preview to Mexico, probably midweek, and then we've got the Mexican Grand Prix. It's a normal weekend next weekend, so Saturday qualifying, Sunday race. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. I'll see you next time.